Fontana Lake, a stunning Smoky Mountain destination that's been enjoyed since its creation in 1944 by both locals and tourists alike. A lake known above all for its scenic, natural viewsheds, with 90% of the shoreline reserved as protected land, split between the Nantahala National Forest and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's tough to find many lakes these days that aren't predominantly bordered by multi-million-dollar developments and second homes, but Fontana offers some 10,000 acres of navigable water space out in the middle of the southern Appalachian Mountains, hours away from any large cities. And yet, despite all the legal protections and the comparative remoteness, this lake still finds itself continually plagued by the carelessness of man. It's got, as we always say, a dirty little secret, a catch, one that stands in particularly stark contrast to the natural beauty of the area and gets exposed each year as the water levels are lowered. Yup, this lake is filled with trash. In this video, we'll be sharing about how all of this trash got here in the first place, what's being done about it today, and what the prognosis for the future is. To start unpacking it all, here's our very own Brandon Jones, manager of Fontana Marina and director of the annual Fontana Lakeshore Trash Cleanup.
So all this trash has been accumulating for 75 years, and some of the places it's coming from, we got three main tributaries that come in, the Little Tennessee, the Tuckasegee, and the Nantahala River. And there's trash that flows down through those cities into the lake, so that's part of where it's coming from. Others is just boaters, stuff flying off their boat over time, and the floating houses. The reason I would say there's still so much trash is because there's no one out here that's ever done anything to clean it.
Which brings us back to the lack of houses and privately owned land surrounding the lake. Counterintuitive as it is, the lack of development is one likely reason that the trash, which of course is not an issue unique to Fontana by any means, has accumulated for so long without intervention, a problem that is less common on other lakes. Think about it. If you're a lake homeowner and trash floated up into your front yard, even if it isn't your trash, you're probably going to clean it up because you don't want it on your property. But when all that property is public land shared by all, oftentimes, rather than everybody sharing the burden of keeping it clean, all of a sudden, nobody wants to take on that burden.
One entity, they say, oh, that's their trash, and one of them says it's their trash, and everybody just, oh, it's not our trash, and really it just is a way to sit on the couch and point a finger, waiting around on Joe Bob's tree service or Larry's whatever to clean this thing up. Ain't happening, you know. It's nobody's it's not one person's main issue or one corporation. Like they always say, it's not our trash, but it is our planet. So we have, this is our little world, and going out and cleaning it is something that we can do. So we just, every year we set it up, we do it. A little past history on how the cleanup started out here on Fontana Lake.
It all started 7 years ago. A few of the boat owners were lamenting about all the trash, and Brandon simply said, well then, let's go pick it up.
It was super small. It was like 12 people showed up, had a couple of dumpsters, and in a day and a half, we ended up with 22,000 pounds of trash. At that point, I was like, huh, and we'd only cleaned one actual mile of shoreline to get that much trash, and I thought, wow, this is gonna be huge. If I could scale this up and make it more assembly line, kind of saw what was going on, what slowed us down, although 22,000 pounds in a day and a half isn't super slow, but it was right there for the picking. It wasn't like we were having to look. And pretty huge hurdle to jump, but by the next season it kind of beefed it up and ended up getting in with the National Park Service, got use of their big barge to hold trash, and just kind of scaled it from there. The barge is our money maker. That's how we do it. Or Kathleen Gibby would keep the Tennessee River beautiful. They have big trash boats, which also help. They're a lot faster. Either way, both of them work really, really well. Scaling out, basically just assembly line work. So we send people out, they go to the coves, they bag up trash, get all the stuff down 10 feet from the water line, and then they go to the next cove and they go to the next. The people essentially are not bringing it back, unloading it, There's a lot of time in that. We have the barge come behind them, pull in a cove, load it all on it, go to the next cove, load it all on it, and it just makes everything work real seamless. So that's kind of like the backstory on the lake cleanup. We were around 500,000 pounds before this cleanup, after the last 7 cleanups that we did.
Which catches y'all up to present day, the 2025 annual Fontana Lakeshore trash cleanup.
First attempt.
Okay, I'll run myself. That Brandon and you guys have been able to organize this for so many years. Who's done this before? Awesome. So we got maybe about half and half.
Be careful. These banks are steep. It's going to be muddy.
One thing that's really hazardous out there is just climbing up and over all this debris.
With bellies full of bojangles and boxes of trash bags and gloves, the 60 or so volunteers for day 1 broke out into groups of roughly 10 and headed out with their designated boat captains to various coves that either Brandon or the Park Service had marked in advance as being in need of some major TLC. What do you think?
We're getting there.
Yep.
One piece at a time.
Did you find something interesting? Oh my gosh! That might be the strangest find of the cleanup. We'll see. So this is your first cleanup, right?
It is.
What do you make of it? Are you overwhelmed or encouraged,
Parts
or
of
what do
it,
you
like
think?
this area right here, absolutely overwhelming. We're picking up a lot of trash that's been here since I was a kid. I can tell by the type of bottle it is and everything. In the end, I feel like we're making a big difference.
Dennis is referring to something we like to call historic trash. If a cove has historic trash, that's our way of saying that it's never been picked up in one of our cleanups before, so it likely contains a backlog of trash decades long, aka a ton of trash.
Historic coves you pull 100 bags out of. When we go back and do maintenance, we might get 5-10 bags out of it, maybe even 1, just depending on how long it took us to get back there.
The historic trash coves, along with the styrofoam chunks, which we'll talk about here shortly, are the reason that this cleanup is still so massive. One day, once we've cleaned every cove along the 239 miles of shoreline on this lake at least once and all the historic trash is gone, we look forward to maintenance cleanups with a fraction of the trash to pick up. Until then, though, we'll keep our assembly line cranking out bags from these historic coves. Now, once the trash is bagged, loaded up on one of the trash barges, and shuttled back to the marina, the work is only halfway done. Getting this much trash up what sometimes feels like the world's longest boat ramp, then into an 8-foot tall dumpster, would be an absolute nightmare without the proper infrastructure. We do this in one of 2 ways. The smaller barges that Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful operates are loaded onto a trailer, driven up the ramp, and unloaded straight into the dumpsters. The big barge, however, is unloaded with the help of heavy machinery. To put into perspective how efficient this process is, I did a little math. This year's cleanup haul would have taken over 80 pickup truck loads, 80 trips back and forth between the dumpsters. Instead, the smaller barges were unloaded a total of 5 times, and the big barge just twice. This goes to show that this cleanup could not happen on this scale without our 2 key cleanup partners, the National Park Service and Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful. Thanks, guys. And can't forget our heavy equipment operators, who, speaking of which, had their skills put to the test multiple times on the second and final day of the cleanup. All right, we got day 2 of the cleanup going today. Day 1 turnout was incredible. We had over 50 volunteers, civilian volunteers, plus 10, 15 Park Service folks. So really good turnout, not just numbers, but also the caliber of volunteers was just fantastic. You know, this is a very, very demanding cleanup, and physically to be sure. These banks are so steep. The piles of driftwood that we're trying to navigate through can be so dense and tricky. And it's also very mentally challenging because some of these spots can honestly just be really overwhelming, a little disheartening. And so it takes a special kind of volunteer, really somebody very strong and somebody very selfless to come to an event like this, and even more so to come back to an event like this once you know what you've gotten yourself into. And I'm just so continuously inspired by our awesome volunteers. Also a big win that all of the trash is picked up, for those who are familiar, between the dam and Sawyer's Creek, which was our goal. Basically, like, our end of the lake is completely clean again. So that's awesome, so exciting. Seeing like the teamwork come in, it's phenomenal. So come check that out. You guys are gonna love this. Day 2 started off strong with the most massive tire we have ever found out here. It's difficult to imagine how a tire like this wound up all the way out here in the first place, and more difficult than you can imagine to move something that heavy. A person could easily be crushed if that thing tipped over on them. So kudos to this group of guys who tackled it head on and worked together every step of the way to get that thing out safely. But once again, getting it back to the marina was only half the battle.
150 yards. Like, to get it to the barge, I thought it would never happen. If it fell over on you, you wouldn't just get hurt, it could break your ribs and everything. Like, this is a tire. It's like this thick.
It took heavy equipment to lift that tire up onto the heavy equipment. What a feat, which turned out to be the first of many that day. We uncovered a whole boat, a concerning number of metal propane tanks, and the barge got called in to yank out a waterlogged float weighing over 500 pounds.
So this is way up on the shoreline, so this is like where it was deposited on the shoreline as the water was dropping. We were just running a line to one of these encapsulated foam blocks, and we were going to tie to it and drag it down here. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Here we go. Oh yeah. Woohoo! Perfect. All right. It's a float. Shoot. The new ones, you just bolt them in so they cannot go anywhere without 6 bolts coming undone at the same time. It's just woohoo! This reminds me, we need to talk more about these styrofoam floats.
When you just look around, you think, oh wow, this is the cleanest lake I've ever seen. But then when you start really looking and get up close, you see those white squares up on the banks of styrofoam. It's really surprising that just like a few people, honestly most of us are middle-aged, out here like rolling this heavy styrofoam down the hill trying to get it off the bank and take care of this beautiful lake. And it's sad that there's still so much of it.
A lot of this foam that comes out from under the floating houses and docks. In the beginning when these were built, they had barrels under them, and then the barrels were banned. And then they said use styrofoam, so people use styrofoam. And then the styrofoam was banned, and now it's encapsulated styrofoam, which is the black floats. The styrofoam has been like a disaster since day one. TVA has it set by 2031. Everybody has to have all this stuff out, and then we'll start seeing a decline in this styrofoam, hopefully. When I rebuild a floating house, I have to document that floating house was taken off the lake so that I can build that house. I feel like when you replace your floats and you get a permit with the new floats, you should have to document that foam came off this lake, instead of just pushing it out and being like, well, it'll be all right, it'll disappear out there, because that stuff doesn't disappear, it doesn't degrade, and it sits everywhere, and it is a huge task to get that much foam off the lake. That stuff is heavy, it takes teams, it is insane.
With that said, y'all will be happy to know that we send the styrofoam from our cleanup to a special recycling facility, where it's ultimately mixed with other recycled materials and then repurposed into that squishy playground material they use nowadays. So who knows, next time you take your kid to the park, you might just have a little piece of Fontana underfoot. And respectfully, you can keep it. Alright, so we've talked about where the trash comes from, what's being done about it, and some of the things like the styrofoam that we know are going to get better in the future. But unfortunately, there's no law outlawing plastic on the horizon, and litter bugs are rarely caught in the act. So litter prevention to some extent will always fall on personal and corporate responsibility. If you're still watching this video, there's a strong chance you personally are not a litter bug. But you might have a friend or family member who doesn't think it's a big deal. Whether as small as a cigarette butt or as big as a tire, all forms of littering are unacceptable. So don't just let it slide. There's no shame in a little positive peer pressure. Secondly, an easy way to help prevent litter is by using less single-use products in the first place. Even if you dispose of it properly, statistically speaking, the odds are it won't be recycled. So at best, that plastic is just going to sit in a landfill. By far, the number one item out of all the bag trash we get is plastic bottles. Filling up a reusable bottle instead of constantly buying bottled water is not only easy, it'll save you money. And as far as soda goes, well, I know you don't need me to tell you that drinking less of that wouldn't hurt anyways, so maybe this can be an added motivation. Outside of educating folks in our circle and doing our part to buy less plastic in the first place, one last suggestion I'd give for pitching in if you're feeling inspired would be adopting a highway mile. Most states here in the U.S. offer this as a program through the DOT, with all gear supplied to you, plus some free roadside advertising if you have a business or church or group you'd like to promote. There are also similar Adopt a Mile programs on some waterways. Do a little research and see what you can find in your neck of the woods. And to all the selfless volunteers who came out this year to do more than their part in keeping our neck of the woods clean, thank you.
It's always pretty wild to see people that's never been here that just wanted to come help on the cleanup. Keep the Tennessee River Beautiful Association, the National Park Service, Graham County Commissioners for helping us with the lift fees at the dump, Sawyers Creek, Swain Clean, Nick Nichols, they did all the food this year.
These dumpsters are not cheap, y'all, and Enterprise Truck Rental helped us pay for a substantial portion of them. Thank you to them. We also had a group of divers that dove on the marina, retrieving over 500 pounds of sunken debris. Shout out to them, as well as the volunteers that stayed back to help them on the top side.
I want to give a shout out to New Belgium Brewery. They're going to come in and help with us next season. Finally get in with a brewery, maybe we'll get some beer.
Now for my favorite part of the cleanup, I got to show you guys some of the fun we had this year. Beyond the aesthetic and environmental impact, one thing that I love about trash cleanups is how they are a bipartisan solution to a global problem that we can all get behind. Seeing people from all walks of life work together seamlessly towards a common goal is something we don't see enough of on our screens nowadays. Enjoy.
If you're thinking about coming out here next year, do it just for the beauty. I'm telling you, it's awesome.
There's a lot of people in this country that just have one shoe on.
Old Man Jones?
Old Man Jones, over and out.